For many of you guys, on August 21st, it was probably a day just like any other. Unfortunately, in the city of Damascus, they woke up to a sarin gas attack. 1,400 people died. There's only documented over 100 YouTube videos. You see, in Syria, there's no journalists, there's no news. 3 years ago, Assad had a media blackout. He had all reporters put out of the country. Now, after we finally ascertained an attack had actually happened, we finally decided to do something. President Obama wanted to put an attack, he wanted to put more boots on the ground, he wanted to do a strike, or he wanted to get drones in there. So, when he was trying to decide what to do, he went and he deferred to Congress to try to get their action. Well, Congress didn't know what to do either. They were trying to debate, they didn't know whether to authorize, again, action booted on the ground, certain military strikes on just military installations, or drones, just observing people, putting more attacks. So, in the meantime, Syria and Russia got together and they had an organization and they negotiated a treaty with the UN, passing Resolution 2118, which actually stopped us from going in and made it so the US didn't need to put any more interest in the ground. Now, maybe sitting yourself asking, why does any of this matter? This war is on the other side of the world, all these things don't affect me, I've got my job. Well, unfortunately, in the United States, our economy is based on fossil fuels and oil. Any conflict in that area raises the price of oil, it's going to have a bad effect on our economy. And unfortunately, we're also just coming out of a recession, so a double hit would really put us back 2 blows. Another thing that happens is we've been in war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Iraq is Syria's direct neighbor to the east. If we have to go back in, it's going to directly countermine our efforts to pull people out. It's basically like going into your neighbor's yard and saying like, okay, time to start, we just got out, we just left. The borders in the area aren't like the borders here in Canada and the United States and between Mexico and there. There's not a clear-cut border. There's not a road and a line in the sand that says this is where Syria ends, this is where Iraq begins. There's just an area of desert where the civilization just kind of stops and drifts off in the sand. All these rebel groups you hear about talking on the news, they're guys that literally just go off away from the cities into the desert, and then they start fighting there. The rebel groups that Assad's talking about are literally the ones that are based off in the LMs. So anyways, United States, Russia, and Syria all came together with this United States Resolution 2118, which really does 3 really important things. The first one is it guarantees the rights for journalists to get into the country and see around. Like I said, Assad has had a media blackout in the area for the past 3 years, so we really don't know anything that's going on in the country aside what's posted on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube videos. The second thing that's going on is it calls for immediate end of the violence. So far to date, the conflict in Syria has claimed over 100,000 people. And the third thing, and probably the most important, is it addresses the chemical weapons stockpile that's been building up in Syria. So, the journalists in Syria have been expelled 3 years ago. When the civil war first started, Assad put them all out. He had people convinced that they were all spies and foreign interventionists. He had all their visas pulled and he removed them. Since then, in the past 3 years, the only news we have out of Syria is based off of Facebook and Twitter accounts. This means that it's skewed either way. If you think the skewing is bad here in the United States between Democrat and Republican, you have no idea. In Assad, if you post an opinion that's against the government, your visa's pulled, you're put out of the country, you're kidnapped, you're killed, or you have to live under the radar, going off branded as a rebel. Because of that, in Syria, there's been over 28 journalists kidnapped in 2008 alone. It is one of the most dangerous countries for journalists to go into. All the news out of there is completely irrational. That's why it took us so long to ascertain that a sarin attack even happened. It was only after going over the evidence of over 100 YouTube videos that we decided that the Syrian people didn't have the resources to fake something like this. So the part 5 of a 6-point resolution on Resolution 2042, which was adopted as a sub-resolution in 2018, says that journalists have to be given a non-discriminatory visa policy and they're free to travel around the country. This is going to give us an objective opinion back into Syria. Let us know what's actually going on in there. Now, the second part of this resolution that was so important, the ongoing humanitarian crisis. As I said, today, the New York Times says that over 100,000 people have died. Now, put this in perspective. How many people do you know how many people died in both the Iraq and Afghanistan wars? According to iCasualties.org, only about 9,000. That is not even 1/10 of the number. What makes us worse is when you take into account the populations of the 2 countries. Syria's only got a population of, I believe, about 26 million people, and last time I checked on Google, the United States, about 316 million. If we were to fight the same war, have the same casualties, we'd have 3 people out of every 10,000 die. In Syria, 4 people out of every 1,000 have gone. This has led to a massive displacement of populations, people fleeing urban centers, trying to get out of the city where they know they can be safe. Massive refugee crisis. There's no facilities, no standards of living, people living in tents outside the cities. Like I said, there's no borders in these areas, so people living off literally springing up towns out of nowhere. Point 2 of the 6-point resolution that was adopted in calls for an immediate end of the violence and allowed for humanitarian aid back into the region so it can build up some temporary shelters so people at least import food in the country. Now, the third and most important thing this resolution does is that it allows the OPCW into the country to remove the chemical weapons stockpiles. As part of the resolution 2118, Syria is required to disclose where all the munitions, the stockpiles, productions, research and development of all the chemical weapons are located. They'll try to go in there, and the organization given this massive task is the OPCW, otherwise known as the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. They have previous experience moving chemical weapons stockpiles in both Libya and Iraq. Currently, they're based in The Hague. They've actually set an incredibly aggressive timetable for removing these chemical weapons, targeted to be completed between mid-2014. So far as to date, they're posting daily updates on their website as to which chemical weapon sites they've gotten to. And as so far, they've gotten up to 18 of 26 weapon sites. The 18th one, they were actually shot at. So they had to pull back on their efforts, but they're still moving forward, trying to remove the chemical weapons, even though the country itself is in an active civil war. In recognition of these efforts, they were actually awarded the Nobel Peace Prize this year. If anything garnishes your opinion that this issue is worth your attention, that should be it. The Nobel Peace Prize is a notion of international attention. They've actually been going through, they've been following their goals, they've been trying to remove the conflict. Now, these international measures by the UN, they're only one step. Like I said, the country is at war with itself. Assad plays like he has all this power, but since the rebel army has taken over half the city, there's been actually a debate over who was the one who launched the sarin attack. Assad denies it, the rebels deny it, but both have reason to suspect the other one. We've only got documentation over it, over 100 YouTube videos. So until this resolution gets put into action, until we've actually got some opinions on the ground, we can't do anything. And the only way this happens is if people like you and me keep paying attention. Thanks for your time.